Welcome to Recurring Insight. It's the beginning of your upkeep, so it's time for another episode. I'm your host Michael, and let's dive in. This week we've got a combo guide that focuses on combos that empty your library. This includes the Forbidden Tutors, Breakfast combo, and more. I won't be going over the Breach combo, which technically empties your library because I already made an episode covering it. I also won't go over combos that involve unbounded draw via infinite mana and an outlet, because there are just too many of them. We'll go over common packages for the combos and what kind of decks they see play in. Let's start by getting this one out of the way. It is the best combo in the format at the moment. Demonic Consultation and Tainted Pact exile your library, and then you've got 3 ways to win the game. Pact has more utility outside of the combo as a high-risk tutor, but it does come with the disadvantage of requiring a true singleton deck. Although at 4 and 5 colors it isn't a huge deal, it does require some workaround for 2 and 3 color decks. The main focus, however, are the actual win cons. Thoracle, as the best of the 3, always makes it in, while the other 2 sometimes get cut. It's the least expensive, you don't need a draw effect, and removal can't stop it, as the trigger still wins off of 0 devotion. Praetor's Grasp also helps. Due to the popularity of the combo, Praetor's Grasp can normally hit someone else's Thoracle, and it has more utility than the other 2 pieces. Worst case scenario, you can steal a tutor to find your Thoracle, or steal Recursion to get yours back. I'm not sure exactly when this trend started, but more and more decks are eschewing Labman and Jace to rely on Grasp. Labman and Lab Jace are a little trickier, but Labman actually sees more play, which I found surprising. There are a couple reasons for this. It has a lower CMC for Ad Naus decks, and its color requirements make it vastly easier to cast. It also sees more play in decks that have an infinite draw outlet or something comparable in the command zone. Jace really only sees play in more controlling decks that don't have backup win cons. This combo is so powerful that it spawned a knockoff for decks without black. Leveler is the awkward friend that Consult and Pact don't include in the group chat. However, it is a creature, which means that it can be found with divergent transformations. Unfortunately, this means that decks that would like to run it have to exclude Dockside. As a further restriction, you need to either have partners or have a commander that generates tokens. With Thrasios and Malcolm existing, you can polymorph into Tidespout Tyrant or Glinthorn Buccaneer. As a result, Divergent Kaikar is really the only list that runs it. If you're interested in Kaikar, feel free to check out the Jeskai Storm episode, but keep in mind that the Kaikar list I cover there is not Divergent Kaikar. Next up, we've got the Breakfast combo. This has barely seen any play since the Flash ban. Here's how it works. You can continuously target Illusionist with Nomads and Core's ability, and Illusionist will cause you to mill your library. This combo requires 2 cards, which means that in order to be viable, you need to be able to recur a win con from the graveyard, as needing another card on the field or in your hand when you combo just wouldn't be viable. The 2 cards that can do this are Dread Return and Sevinne's Reclamation. Reclamation is more expensive, but it is also more commonly seen because of its use in the Breach combo. Dread Return, on the other hand, requires you to sacrifice 3 creatures to be flashbacked. This can be aided by Narcomoeba, Fate Stitcher, and, if you're particularly desperate, Bloodghast. However, you should only need 2 of these, as you can sack Nomads and Illusionist. While Thoracle is an excellent reanimation target for Reclamation, Dread Return grants access to more options, as it isn't bounded by CMC. For example, if you're on the Kiki Jiki combo, you can get it started by reanimating Karmic Guide. This lets you bring Kiki Jiki back, then you can copy the Karmic Guide to bring back Felidar Guardian and flicker Kiki Jiki. Nexus of Fate is also worth mentioning. It shuffles itself back in, so although you do need a way to draw it, it is the source of infinite turns. Additionally, it's the only piece that can win through Rest in Peace and Leyline of the Void. Nexus and Rip both have replacement effects, so the controller of Nexus gets to choose the order they resolve in. Part of the reason this sees so little play besides needing 2 cards is the exacting color requirements. You need white, blue, and ideally black and green. There are a couple Kenrith builds that include the combo, as it has all of those colors and red, which lets it layer with Breach combos. Hermit Druid sees more play. It serves the same purpose as the Breakfast combo, and runs the same recursion packages. It only requires 1 card, which is why it's viable, but you do need to wait a turn, which is why it doesn't see widespread play. Instead, there are 2 types of 4 and 5 color decks that run it. Very proactive decks that are looking for redundancy use it, as well as Staxy decks that are looking for a way to win through their own rule of law effects. I wasn't sure whether or not to include Doomsday, because outside of blue, it's not a combo piece, it's just a way to assemble a combo. For example, Grenzo uses it to assemble a Kiki Jiki combo with Snoop. Feel free to check out the Rakdos episode if you're interested in Grenzo. I'm not going to look at all the possible piles that you can use, I'm just going to focus on what you can do with it in blue. In blue, it's actually part of the combo. It exiles most of your library and finds a payoff. Like I said before, Thoracle is by far the best. In fact, it's so good that it's warped how Doomsday piles are constructed. The famous Doomsday cards like Gush don't see as much play because Thoracle lets you win even with 2 cards left in your library, so it's easier to rely on just a cantrip or 2 after you crack the pile, which, by the way, is vital for running Doomsday. Your commander needs to be able to crack the pile with little effort. That being said, I still want to cover some of the cards that may make it into Doomsday piles. Gush sees less play, but it still does see play. It's better in lower colored decks, but since Doomsday doesn't see play above 3 colors, this isn't an issue. Although you can use any of the main 4 cantrips, Get Probe is the best even after Doomsday slashes your life total, as mana can be tight. Predict can go through 3 cards, but as it's bad outside of the combo, it rarely sees play anymore. Finally, LED and Yawgmoth's Will also see play. It is high risk, but you can net 3 mana by casting a cantrip and holding priority to crack LED before drawing and casting Yawgmoth's Will. That being said, you have no protection when you cast Yawgmoth's Will, so a silence effect would be very helpful. That's a nice segue into the tertiary goal of Doomsday piles. The primary goal is being able to cast Doomsday and crack the pile. The secondary goal is to go through the pile with enough mana available to cast your win con, but the tertiary goal is protection. Doomsday is risky enough that people will typically try to counter the win con rather than Doomsday, as you can end up just losing. Typically, you want to use a free counterspell or a silence effect if you have the mana, but depending on your deck type, you could also try reanimating it. I'm personally more fond of the free counterspell option, as I've been screwed over by a Winds of Rebuke too many times. However, the problem with protection is that it's hard to work into the pile. This is where Gush and Predict can be incredibly helpful, as they net cards. As an example, your pile can comprise of Gush, Get Probe, Pact of Negation, Thoracle, and Reanimate. Crack the pile to draw Gush, cast Gush to draw Probe and Pact, cast Probe to draw Thoracle, and you've now got protection for your Thoracle. If it gets countered, you can reanimate it next turn. You can also use it to set up Twister loops if you have at least 2 cards in hand. It's a little tricky to work around extra cards in hand, but it's doable. Doomsday has a very specific niche, as any deck that has access to Doomsday also has access to Ad Naus, and Doomsday has more stringent color requirements, which limits it to 3 colors and under. Additionally, if you're in 4 or more colors, you do have better options. You also want your commander to be able to crack the pile relatively easily, so you're looking for something like Yuriko and Malcolm/Timna. This is by no means a complete list, it's just the most viable pieces. I mean, you've got cards like Paradigm Shift and Mirror of Fate which don't make it, and payoffs for the mill combos like Necrotic Ooze, but there are just better options. And that's about it. Thanks so much for watching. We're almost at 800 subs and I can't thank you all enough. Also, the semester just ended, so I should be back to the weekly schedule, thank goodness. Anyways, if you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. I'm your host Michael, and I'll see you at the beginning of your next upkeep for another episode of Recurring Insight.